Hey, other developers, stick around for a minute here because we need to talk about this. But let me first dismiss something here. This is asking if games can become too easy to make. No, of course, I want to see the expression of everybody and what they do in their art, and making it easier and easier to be able to do that through tools like Blueprints and Unity getting easier or Godot is all amazing. Just going to say one thing really quick here is this turned into something about generative AI. Generative AI will not make games for you, will not make real games. Stop. That is all smoke and mirrors and lies. Okay, just stop. It's not going to happen. But so let's just talk about that. There's a proliferation of games happening even before ChatGPT and anything else, that we're seeing more and more games out there. Well, you need to change the way you make games or think about games. So I was talking this weekend with some artists, and they were kind of bugging me because they were like, "Hey, why do you watch bad stuff? Why do you like?" I said I'd watched Pacific. If you remember Band of Brothers in the Pacific, I'm like, why did it fail? And I wake up every morning thinking I don't know anything, and I'm really closer to the truth there than saying that I know anything. And so with that is I always try to understand, why do things fail? Why didn't things that seem like a sure hit, like why did that fail? And so one of the things, if you look at art now, if you look at games now, the changes there are this huge there's a huge amount of games. I can't talk this morning. I could be president. But there's a huge amount of games out there that people can choose from, and they can choose from with really low friction, right? Because we have Game Pass, we have free-to-play games, we have demos, right? So it's really low friction. Back in the 90s, you bought a game for $30, already pirated them like me. But like that was your game for a while. And you're like, oh my God. And so you stuck with that game, and you would put up with slow starts. You would put up with like kind of just like not very good beginnings, because you were bought into that. And so people can make games knowing that said, oh, you were going to give this game the benefit of the doubt. And so now it turned into, for a while on Steam, people would be like, well, they're going to give it 2 hours because then they can just return it if they do it within 2 hours. So you have 2 hours. No, you don't. You have about 2 minutes, because people will just bail out. They don't care about your like mystery man who doesn't get any setup or anything. They have to have a hook. You have to have a hook or some explanation or some reason to play the game from the very beginning. Right? This doesn't mean that you change what the art is of your game or what you're talking about, but how you deliver that, how you set that up, how you intro that needs to change. And it needs to change being aware of that, right? It's like sometimes I make these videos and I'll go back and I'm like, oh, I should have front loaded with that because that's the joke. But I don't care about these videos. And I'm just not going to take that much time to them. But for my games, I will. And so I've been studying openings, and I've been like, huh. And what you notice is AAA people will still give the benefit of the doubt. They will still slow roll it into there. But if you're a small indie dev with an unknown IP, right? So people on my game, The Anacrusis, will say like, oh, there's no writing. You never get into any of the character stuff because they never play it long enough. Where if it was made by Valve, they would have played it long enough and they would realize there's actually more than we ever put in Left 4 Dead. And so like in our Discord, how people talk about the game is radically different than how people out in the wild talk about it, because the people in the Discord have played it for a long time and they have the understanding and the complexity of the characters. But when you just do a quick brush of it, right, you don't get that. And so that means then I've got to front load that. Like I should have front loaded Boris. Boris should be in the very beginning of the video. He's been getting sick lately, so it means less food right away in the morning. I know. 3 breakfasts, not 5. But, right, so becomes the real issue. And that is you're competing for everybody's attention. Everybody's attention is so short that it's fine that everybody's making games. And, I downloaded a bunch of stuff off of Itch over the weekend because somebody made something that I thought looked really cool and neat. But even in their own portfolio of like 7 games I got with it, I only gave each one like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, some of them, they're small and tiny, and that was kind of the gist of them, right? But it's like even that was like competing for my attention and competing for, what's going to grab me and what I'm going to sink into. And so we see that at the start, you've got to hook them, and then it's about retention. And that means then, so that you get them in that first few minutes, and then you're going to actually keep them playing, right? And so that's, your upgrade path or whatever's got to be exposed. And then the really lousy part of all of this comes is then it's about user acquisition. If there's endless amounts of good art, it's all about how can you get players in. It's about user acquisition. And mobile's already in this place, right? And that's why all mobile games are about two things. They're about about monetization and user acquisition. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about design. They don't care about what, because if they can get you in, then they can monetize you, right? And there's a big hubbub of someone just stole an indie game and made it a monetizable mobile game, and they've got more user acquisition, right? And so that's why the big players in mobile can only do it. And that scares me for, is that the future of what we're going to see on the desktop games, where it's all about user acquisition, because then it's about money, and it's about who has the deepest pockets to spend enough money to make this game a success. Like, Monopoly Go is a giant hit on mobile, but they spent $1 billion to make it a giant hit on mobile. They spent that with user acquisition, right? Like, I don't understand Supercell anymore, because they're spending $100 million on ads for a mobile game with famous people, but that's how desperate they are, and that's Supercell. Yeah, you know them. We don't play their games, but we know their name. But right, that's what you're competing against now, and that's scary. And that's why I think about building community. Why I make these videos. Why I play with my community because I like my community. But like, making the game out of that is part of it, and that we can't just all be artists now that go crawl off in a corner and occasionally spout something. And here's the deal: some people get to do that still. Balatro gets to do that. But you can't base your history on the repeatable there, right? To really go off on a tangent, this is why, I'm not going to go off on that tangent. I can get people mad at me again. But yeah, that is what, as a developer, you have to think about these things now, right? And that's why wish lists and all of that. And yeah, you got to make a good game. And then how you present that game, how you present that art has to be thinking about those things, about what hooks people in, what grabs them and keeps them going. And don't worry about generative AI. It's not going to make a game. It's not real. You can make a game, though, couldn't you? What game would you make? You think about that one? All right, I'll get back to you. I put you on the spot. That wasn't fair.